YouTube, what the crap's going on? HeirofCarthage here, and I am back on Total War Rome 2. And of course, I am going to do some online action for you here, but I wanted to have a quick discussion. Some of you have asked me about the Iceni and the Arverni. You know, are they potential to be used in some kind of special way, kind of like I've done with the Swaby? But just prefacing all this, I do have some more action with the Swaby coming up for you, and it'll help show you that my tactics with them are not invincible by any means. In fact, I played a match where I thought someone played to counter me pretty well. I'm not going to tell you whether I still won or lost. I'll let you see that for yourself, but someone who definitely did a good job countering me. So you all will get to see that. So Arverni and Iceni, neither one of them is capable of mass changes to their stats with general abilities. Number one for the Iceni, because they don't have a special ability that came to them in the Caesar and Gaul expansion. The Arverni do, but those abilities are not nearly so massive as they are for the Swaby. And it's probably because the Arverni units are more stable to begin with. But in any case, I wanted to have a little discussion about the Iceni, because some of you have asked me about them. And I've done a faction focus on them in the past, but probably skipped over some of the finer details that I want to cover here. And in any case, let's take a look at some of their units. And the one unit of theirs that's of particular interest to me is this Chosen Sword Band. And the reason for that is, the reason for that is because they have the Headhunt and Frenzy ability. Their attack is not very good. Their weapon damage is fantastic. They've got a good charge bonus. It's not beastly, but it's good. And they've got solid melee defense, armor, health, and base morale. So for the price, almost all of their statistics are in line to be a fantastic unit. The only one that isn't is their melee attack. And they also don't have formation attack, which would make them last a little longer in a fight. So for the money, it's definitely one of the better barbarian sword units, especially since it has the Headhunt ability. The Headhunt ability will add to your melee attack and morale big time, and it comes in phases. The second phase of Headhunt is the most powerful phase. I've found that if you use Frenzy properly in the charge, you get a solid charge with Chosen Sword Band, use Headhunt, these guys will, depending on the nature of the charge and depending on your enemy, they will nearly kill a standard Roman legion, and what I mean by that is this unit here, a legionary cohort. They will sometimes kill it, sometimes they won't. If they have some help from other units, maybe with some flanking or some skirmishers, they are capable of killing it. In a one-on-one fight where it's just an even charge between the two, the Roman tends to do better. But it will take horrendous losses winning the fight, which is interesting to see because they're about the same price. So the Iceni do have access to good sword units. I think where they're going to struggle versus Rome is, they have cavalry that can do pretty good. Heroic riders are good. They can definitely be a tough fight for Praetorian Cav. Veteran riders are probably not going to be as good, but they're an affordable unit, and for the cost, they're a pretty good unit. So definitely no complaints there. From a spear standpoint, they have access to Levy Freeman and Spearband. If you really needed it, Chosen Spearband, though I would be careful of using those guys. It's going to be very situational on whether they pay off. From a skirmishing standpoint, of course, the Iceni are going to have some disadvantages to Rome. Chariots, so Scythe chariots are still very much alive. They're still a powerful unit. They can be stopped easier than they were in the past. Britain chariots are a lot cheaper. And they're not quite as powerful. That's not to say, though, that they don't have potential uses. It's just that they do come with a lower cost, and they are easier to kill than the Scythe chariots. And it seems like, for whatever reason, these guys can cause massive destruction. You just saw it in one of my videos, or campaign videos, but it's trickier. But in any case, I wanted to show you a matchup that I played, Iceni versus Rome, and I wanted to have this discussion before the match so that we could focus on the match at hand. It's actually not it. It's this one right here. So I'm going to be taking on Rome with the Iceni. And this is a tough matchup at best. And you can see here that my army is 5 chosen swordsmen, 2 heroic nobles, a couple of spears, a few skirmishers, and then I have 2 heroic riders and 2 veteran riders. My Roman opponent here chose, it looks like 3 Praetorians, and then a whole bunch of spearmen. I'm not sure what the reasoning behind the spearmen is here. Rome has an easy ability to keep up with the Iceni in the cav department. maybe he's overly worried about chariots or something of the sort. Maybe he's a Rome 1 player coming over, and he sees Iceni chariots and thinks that they're still really powerful like they were in Rome 1. And again, I'm not trying to downplay the chariots too much. If they can get into the right position, the chariots really can cause a lot of damage. But it's not as easy as it is with scythe chariots. They have slightly less mass, it seems, and they don't have the scythes on the side. And I don't know what kind of difference, if any, that makes. I'll have to look into the stats. But even if the scythes just make the scythe chariots a little wider to where it's more likely they're going to trample a unit, that could potentially explain why they're more deadly as well. Because the Iceni chariots do not have any scythes on the side. But in any case, yeah, I'm going to move up my army slowly towards the Roman. The Roman's taking a very defensive position, which is only going to help me. I think that the best way that the Romans can ensure that the Iceni have a very hard time beating them is by trying to somewhat match the Iceni line so that there's no easy outflanking. And also, I think you'd want to push your advantage as the Romans, like some kind of... I mean, the fact is the Roman infantry pound per pound is more cost effective than the Iceni. I don't think that you need to bring units like Praetorian Guard versus the Iceni. And the reason is you don't need a Praetorian Guard to slow down a heroic noble. A heroic noble can cut through... Let's see, where's one of my heroic nobles at? Right here. These guys can cut through some of the lesser Roman units. They would have a very hard time cutting through an elite Roman unit. Not to say that it couldn't be done in the right scenario, but they probably won't do it easily. And I'm assuming my opponent's somewhat new here too, because he's got his Triarii in square here. Not really sure what that is, and rather than spears on the flanks, he has sword on the flanks. So maybe he figures to just hold me in the front with the spears, and then let his elite sword units on the flanks finish me off. I go ahead and move some of my cav around his flanks, and then I keep a couple of cav near my infantry, because I don't want to open my infantry up to a charge from his Praetorian cav. It would be pretty devastating. So, again, not really sure what my opponent's up to, and I'm kind of just taking an eye at the situation. My opponent's in this very defensive position, and I don't want to focus... I don't want to focus too much. Well, for instance, I kind of want to come up here and present some sort of front to his spearmen, but I don't want to focus too much attention there. I just want to keep a couple of units, and then what I'll do is pin these units and then take extras around to hit him in the flank. His cavalry outnumber, and I'm feeling pretty good about beating them, but I haven't faced Praetorian cav recently with heroic riders. I got a good charge here, but he immediately pops the Draco ability, which is going to hurt me, because heroic riders fight with spears, and there is an invisible bonus versus cav for any spear-wielding unit. So right here, the Praetorian cav are going to have an advantage on me. Let's see, stat-wise, it's 95 health. Yeah, looks like my melee defense is down due to Draco as well. The Praetorian melee defense is down. So the Praetorians have... roughly the same melee defense, armor 95, 60. Yeah, their stats are very comparable between the two units. So they're very closely matched. Anyway, I brought up my skirmishers. I'm just trying to have his levies use up some of their ammo. My Britain skirmishers are terrible as well. Levies aren't very good. Britain skirmishers aren't very good. They can affect a few kills if you get them into a flank, but they only have 22 missile attack, and so I'm just going to, again, exchange ammunition. If his levies waste ammo on my worthless skirmishers, then great. That means he can't use it on my sword infantry. He does dispatch a Triarii into this cav fight after I rear charged him with a unit of veteran riders, and his Triarii are going to rip my veteran riders a new one. I really should have retreated when I saw his Triarii incoming. And then over here I've just pinned down a Praetorian Guard with a Levy Freeman. And here I get a nice frenzied charge into his Praetorian Guard with some heroic nobles. And off the charge, my heroic nobles are going to do very well. You can see that they knock that Praetorian down hardcore. And then here in a minute I'm going to pop Headhunt on all these units. Right now they're just in a frenzy, which increases their weapon damage and charge damage. The charge bonus is increased a pretty fair amount, so it's a good thing to use. Now Headhunt comes off on my units, so you're going to see a second phase kick in here. So I let the charge take its damage, and then I kind of waited a minute to pop in Headhunt, because Frenzy will make my guys tired, and so it kind of gives my guys a second win, so to speak. And then to make sure these Praetorians are finished off, I'm going to rear charge them with the Chosen Swordband. But these Praetorians are starting to catch up to my heroic nobles, so this was necessary. So a rear charge for my Swordband finishes. Again, over here I pin his Praetorian Guard. There's two of them. They're Praetorians. And I'm actually Yeah, his guys are starting to falter here due to poor morale from being outflanked. Here comes a rear charge with Chosen Swordband. Get some nice javelins. I should have let my men spread out a little more before the charge. It would have been a little more effective, but still gonna do its damage. This unit here is now starting to lose men, and this one's outnumbered by a Heroic Noble and a Chosen Swordband. So the morale starts to take its toll. The cav fight just went on and on and on. Neither one of us lost our elite cav units yet. And his Triari mopped up my veteran rider. I had another veteran rider here that I kind of intercepted his units with, and I'm going to try and pin him with a spear band. And over here you can see the last two units of Praetorians gave way and routed, and are now being slaughtered by my men as they attempt to flee. So in this case, I think that really the only reason the Iceni managed to, and I came out pretty well here, really well. This fight should have been much more Pyrrhic, I think, for Iceni versus Rome, if the Iceni player wins at all. Because I do expect Rome to have the advantage in an open engagement like this. Again, though, some of the Iceni units definitely not bad. You get a nice bang for your buck with the Chosen Swordband because of that Headhunt and Frenzy. It gives them a powerful charge, and it makes them be able to last a little longer with Headhunt and cause more damage, basically, which affects you more opportunities like this to either outflank with infantry or with cavalry. Painted ones are a great unit to do outflanking maneuvers with if you can get them behind the line without getting cav charged. So like for instance, if you do an effective cav screen and you get a painted one behind enemy lines, their charge is brutal. Or ambushers, if you can get them behind enemy lines, again a very weak unit to cav, but if you can look at these Praetorians, by the way, holding out here at the end, for some reason their morale kind of stabilizes here for the most part, and they just sit here and fight like dragons. These guys have racked up almost 200 kills. This is the one that mopped up the spear unit on the flank, so that's where most of its kills came from. But yeah, surrounded by multiple units, it continues to hang in there. Finally routes, but an impressive performance from them. The only unit he has left is this Triari out here in a square formation, which probably helps their morale. But Triari are pretty strong units anyway, and they do just fine against the spear band. But they're going to start routing too, due to army losses. So again, moral of the story here, why I won. I chose a decent army. There's things about it that could potentially be changed based on the situation. My opponent's army was probably not so smart. You really didn't need so many Triari versus the Iceni. If he would have traded in those couple of Triari for 3 more Legionnaires, it's probably unlikely that I would have won this fight. And let's see what this other unit was here. Praetorians. Okay, so he did have 3 Praetorian Guard. He had 4 elite infantry. And even these guys, if he would have spread them out a little more to where they could cover more ground and not bunch them up, even those 4 units, I don't know that they would have, but they would have had a much better fighting chance. He wasn't really able to do much with this Saki Hastati either. And again, Triari can hold out for a long time even against sword units. They have an impressive armor and melee defense statistics. Again, though, I still say that if he would have traded in these units for some more infantry, and then just kind of better chosen his army, what about like 2 elite units, and then just trade these guys for standard infantry here? That would have left him more money for cavalry, and it would have made my job a whole lot harder too, because you saw how well his 2 Praetorian Cav held out against what I had. So, again, a lot of it's army choice. So, can the Iceni face Rome? They can, but you're going to need to get creative, and you're going to need the Roman player to make some mistakes. Now, I think that you obviously want to try and pick your map well, and number one, you probably want to pick a map where skirmishing is minimized. So pick a map with lots of forest, or a hill, or something like that gives you the chance to rush and block incoming skirmish fire. Because if your opponent spends money on skirmishing, and you're able to get straight into a melee engagement, you might have some type of advantage due to the fact that they spent money on skirmishing units, and if you can nullify those quickly, it could potentially give you a nice advantage. And the reason I say that is because the Iceni really can't stand and skirmish with anybody. Their Briton skirmishers are the best skirmish unit they have, and it's a middle-of-the-road slinger. There's worse and there's better. For the price, it's not a bad deal. 4 armor-piercing damage and then 16 regular. Not a bad deal, but it takes slingers a great deal of time, and they have to expend a great deal of ammunition to start killing Roman units. And some of the higher armored ones, I mean, it just wouldn't amount to much in the end, probably, unless you're getting flank fire. Now, if you can get flank fire, slingers do great from the flank. The problem is that prior to earlier patches in Rome 2, slingers most definitely die to archers now. It's just, that's the way it is. There's occasions where elite slingers might be able to take down some of the weaker archers, but I mean, if you take a Cretan archer against a Rhodian slinger, it's a no contest. The Cretan archer mops them up. And so it's something that's kind of changed through the patches in Rome too. Let me show you these other units just real quick and tell you why I suggested the ambushers for the flank, for instance. These guys actually have a 20 bonus versus infantry, which is much bigger than your standard infantry unit. So that plays a huge role. And you'll see that their charge bonus is higher, and they also have frenzy, which means they could potentially get a huge charge. Ambushers also have javelin ammunition that acts more like javelins did in Rome 1. You can leave them there on fire at will, and they'll just empty all their javelin ammunition at a unit that's in range. You can then charge with them. So I think that's one advantage with the ambushers, is that they're kind of like a mix between a skirmish unit and a sword unit, but that you really don't want them on the main line of a charge, and it's because of this right here. Only 10 armor and 45 health. These guys are going to get eaten alive in a mainline engagement, unless they got to expend a whole bunch of their ammunition. Again, be very careful with them. They're extremely vulnerable to cav, because it seems to me, and I don't know if this is the reason or not, but it seems to me that units with mediocre health and low armor die very quickly to cavalry, because cavalry have that huge mass, and it seems like that the mass on the charge ends up playing a role in what the destruction of that charge is. As far as other British sword units, the painted ones was another one I suggested, and again, these guys have the best charge. Again, no armor or health, so to speak, but a huge bonus versus infantry. That's why these units can be so devastating from the flank, and I would really recommend them for the flank. Let a more stable unit like a Chosen Sword Band or a Heroic Noble hold up your front, and then try and do flanking with painted ones. But you're going to have to effectively screen them from enemy cav, because if you see the Iceni trying to outflank you with painted ones and with ambushers, your best bet is to hit those guys with cav, because they won't be able to stop your cav. Even a light cav unit is very dangerous to them, so I guess that kind of helps you from both sides of the aisle be able to know how to handle that better. Anyway, hopefully I've given you a little bit of information on the Iceni. As far as general abilities, the commander's probably just about as good as anything. Rally and Raise Banner will help your men have a little extra melee defense and morale. I don't really see Strategist being a huge help. I guess it could. And I don't see Warrior being a huge thing either. Intimidate doesn't seem to do much, and Warcry is helpful, but it seems like if you pick Warrior, you kind of end up just getting one general ability, which I don't know. If you all know how to use Intimidate effectively, let me know. But anyway, that's my quick rundown on the Iceni plus a battle there. Hope you all enjoyed it. HeirofCarthage signing off for now.